What is this new device? And how do you use it to set up your cleats exactly where you need them to be? As a cyclist and a bike fitter, I know how important it is to set your cleat position in exactly the right spot. Most cyclists have got some idea of how far forward or backward they want their cleats. Most cyclists will place their cleats centrally from medial to lateral, side to side. But how do you make sure you get the right angle, the amount of rotation? That's often overlooked. And how do you replicate that cleat position each time you want to change your cleats out? In the simplest of terms, if your feet angle out a long way when you sit or when you stand and walk, then your bike shoes will need to be angled out in a similar position. If your feet are angled out just slightly, then your bike shoes will need to have a more minor toe out position. If you have a really extreme foot out position, you won't be able to replicate that on the bike because your heels are going to hit the chainstay of the frame. I've seen people in my clinic that have got toe out angles of 30 degrees. Obviously we can't put them on the bike in that position, but they usually do quite well with a moderate amount of toe out created for them. There are of course also some people that have a toe in or a pigeon toe stance. This is pretty rare. I don't see it very often in adults. If that applies to you, then the following information is still applicable. Just have to use the same principles in the opposite direction. To create or assess the out-toeing angle for your bike shoe, the simplest process is to place your bike shoes over the edge of a table so your cleats are in front of the table edge. Then pull the shoes back until the rear edge of the cleat sits flush with the table edge. This gives you a visualization of the angle of each shoe sitting on its cleat and the relative angle of the two shoes sitting next to each other. It's really only a very rough guide that can show up some results people are often not expecting. If your cleats are slightly loosened, you can choose the angle by holding the cleat still and then rotating your shoe above the cleat to where you want it. Then tighten the cleat bolts to maintain that final position. Earlier this year, being 2023, I came across a tool that provides the best method to make sure you can get your cleat angle exactly where you want it and replicate it precisely every time. I found this on Kickstarter. That's how it was brought to market. It's called the Cleat Key. When I first saw it on the Kickstarter campaign, I thought it was overpriced and overhyped, had some nice slick marketing videos, didn't see immediately the value of it. However, when it made it to production, I actually bought one on Amazon. The cost was $80 US plus shipping, and I've actually made good use of it since then. So how does this Cleat Key tool actually help? Well, firstly, here on the top, it's actually got a protractor inscribed on it. Hopefully you can see there the angles and numbers. So that actually allows you to measure your foot angle on the ground and use that as a base for then working out how much angle you want to put onto the cleat and the bike shoe. Now on the Cleat Key website, they actually suggest that you take your foot angle on the ground, divide that by 3, and then you use that as the final angle that you set the cleats at. Now I'm not sure exactly what research supports that. That's not what I do in my practice. Basically I decide that if someone has a lot of toeing out, then they get a lot of cleat angled out position, toe out position. If they've only got a little bit of toe out, then they get a little bit of toe out on the cleat. And if they've got a moderate amount of toe out with their feet on the ground, guess what? They get a moderate amount of toe out on the cleat. However, that said, Once you've got the exact angle that you want and that you like and that you feel comfortable with, this tool is going to allow you to make sure that you get exactly that same angle every time you replace worn cleats or every time you've got to make an adjustment to your cleat for whatever reason. Now, I should point out at this stage that this cleat tool, Cleat Key tool, only works for Shimano and Look. I guess any other triangular shaped cleat out there. It really doesn't work particularly well for speed play. I'll show you how it works in a moment so you can see the fitment over the cleat. You could potentially use it for speed play, but it's a bit of a juggle. The biggest USP of the Cleat Key tool is really that it's see-through, it's transparent. I've also used these ergon cleat fitting tools for many years. They work all right, but if they were transparent, they would be 10 times more useful. So once you've chosen fore-aft and medial lateral placement of the cleat, selecting the cleat angle is very simple. You place the cleat key over the top of the cleat by pulling back the spring, lining up the top of the triangle and releasing the spring. Then you can steer the cleat into position and see and choose the angle you want by the line marking which matches up with the center rear of the shoe. Most bike shoes have a seam at the center of the heel, or you can make a mark on the shoe yourself at the center. So finally, by securing the cleat in position, by holding the cleat key firmly, you can tighten the bolts and voila. For those of you who have spatial awareness challenges like I do, the manufacturers have even had the foresight to write on the tool which direction is heel in or toe out for which foot. Such a simple addition to the product, but so helpful. So once I got over the price shock, I found this device is actually very useful. It's something I can see serious cyclists using on a regular basis, and also for cyclists that have injuries or are particularly sensitive and need a very specific cleat placement.